Hi, everybody. This is Holly from Holly's Pandorium. I hope everyone is comfortable and having plans to set in a new year. We're coming to an end of 2024, and there's a lot to talk about. So, Doug and I thought for those of us that are hanging out tonight, this would be a fun thing to listen to, maybe. And for those of you that are going out, I hope you have a way home that's safe, and I hope you have a lovely time goofing off with your friends and whatnot. This is a fun year. This year has been full of so many new things in the paranormal. And so, for those of you that have watched this program and others like it, the paranormal has been very active in 2024, and it doesn't look to be slowing down anytime soon. There's some in particular things that we wanted to share that we haven't always shared everything on this podcast. So, we're going to do a little bit more sharing tonight and give you some fun things to think about and give you some ideas for the coming year to maybe check out or think about yourself. So, one of the first things that we did this year that was just in the planning stages for most of the year, we had a ghost nuptial this month. And I will try to post some pictures later on, but we literally had a male and female ghost show up and tell us that they wanted to renew their wedding vows. And so we did that a couple weeks ago here, just Doug and I, and it was awesome. I mean, Doug found some music from their era because they were during their lives were during the 20s and 30s. And he found some wonderful music for them to listen and dance to. And they did dance. And even though they couldn't have cake, we had the kind of cake they wanted that was like their original wedding cake. And we made them coffee because they like to smell coffee. And it was just really fun and it was wonderful. And we are very, very honored and blessed to have been able to do that for them. And it's just really been amazing. There's been some new connections that we've had this year that I've never had before. And we just wanted to share about that stuff. And that was one of the ones that I think was the most delightful. It wasn't scary at all. I've had some this year that were scared the beans out of me a bit. Um, and the ghost nuptials were more of just a delight and a joy. And I really hope that someday I get really good at AI or I find someone that can help me recreate stuff that I've seen because it was beautiful. It was just really, really was. Do you have anything you want to add to that, Doug?
Well, interestingly enough, it was an odd request. That I mean, that was definitely a first.
Right.
And even the people that we have shared that information with have been blown away by that. Nobody's ever heard of that kind of thing, and
Right.
and but also it seemed to be a very important milestone on the other side of the veil. There were people who saying like there were those that were saying it was a pivotal moment,
Right.
not really sure what for.
Right.
Um, and there were people who were for it,
Mm-hmm.
and there were those that were against it.
Mm-hmm.
It really fascinating. I mean, to you and I, it was a matter of making this couple happy.
Right.
That's all that mattered to us.
Right.
And they were wonderful. They
Yeah.
come here, they sit on the couch with Gizmo and calm her down.
Mm-hmm.
They're just really lovely energies. You
And,
know,
and and Doug's right. I mean, every spirit has a personality, just like in life. People all have personalities, and these were, as you would call, salt of the earth people. Very welcoming, very friendly, very open, very kind. Everything about them is love. There isn't anything about these two energies that uh, cause me any concern or any worry. They're just nothing but love,
right?
and
They do.
just
They
even what
do.
they, yeah,
They did. I mean, they appear to be from, say, like the 1920s, possibly the 30s. The whole Great Depression era,
yes,
because of their attire and the way they their viewpoint of things.
Right.
So it was they didn't want anything fancy.
Right.
You know, he didn't want a bride and groom on the cake because they didn't have one when they got married.
Right.
Especially, there were no tuxes, there were no,
Right. They
yeah,
didn't have
they're very salt of the earth.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And she had these pale pink flowers with green on the edges, or a white or almost a pale green coloring on the edges of some kind. And so I happened to find some at Safeway, and they were delighted. So I feel like that was a big check in the win column, definitely. So that was a fun thing. And then throughout this year in the seances, we've had a lot of things come our way, but I wanted to share some of the stuff that was really surprising. And one of them was we had a ghost tour bus come through.
Yeah, that's funny.
A ghost tour bus. So there's usually a line of ghosts that come in to be seen and talked to, that they want to be heard for one reason or another. And no, they don't all go to the Veil. Some of them just are here to visit, and that's totally fine. I don't bug anybody about it. Whatever they want to do is fine. And we've had busloads of ghosts come that have died together in a bus. We've had busloads of ghosts come to leave that just came together in groups. We've had a tunnel that comes right to our house through the neighborhood that we live in.
Yep.
Where is literally these big lines of spirits that come together and leave, or that just talk. And
we've had angels come, and they're out in the masses of the spirits that are around in the park, and sending multiples and multiples of energies, across the Veil.
That just want to go to the Veil. So it's like a mass exodus, and I don't say that to scare anybody. It's just time. This season that we're coming into, and I say season in the spiritual realm sense, I know there's a lot happening in the United States and in other countries politically, and it's not about that. It's completely removed from that, but it's affected by it.
Yes.
And so the energy that we have in our souls right now affects the souls that are around us that don't have a body.
Right.
And so when there's a collective of anxiety and stress or panic or fear or any of those things, it affects the entire realm that we live in. Yeah. And so there are souls that have been hanging out here and they're done. They want to go the rest of the way home.
But what's interesting about that is it's almost, if you think of it in biblical terms, it's kind of like their version of the rapture.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting.
Explain what you mean by that, Doug.
Well, the rapture is supposed to be mass crossing over to what you would consider heaven, which is one of the hallmarks of the biblical Armageddon, correct?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So the energies are so tumultuous right now that a lot of the spirits are done with it. They just want to go.
Right.
And they're leaving in such quantities, it's kind of like the rapture.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Gotcha. Yeah. So that's interesting. And there's still souls that want to stay, that are staying for different reasons. They've
got their popcorn and they're waiting to see.
And they just want to see what's going to happen. They just want to see what's going on. And I want to say this too before I go any further. Genuinely, there has been a massive amount of stress that I have felt, but for some reason in the last couple of weeks, I have noticed that there has been a peace that has come over me, and I have felt like 2025 is going to be smoother than we think. And I wanted to share that with everybody. So for anybody that's sitting at home watching this or listening to this in your car on the way to work or home from work, just know that I have it from some very good sources that You're going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. And things are not going to be as bumpy as we might have anticipated. And
They
that
might be rocky in the
yeah,
beginning.
there's going to be some strife, but it's not going to be as bad as we anticipated. And the best thing that the spirits are telling me is that our country has been through much worse, and that by comparison to some of the things that have happened in the last 75 years, this is nothing.
Right.
Which for us, it's not nothing. This
Right.
is big. The things that are happening around us right now are big, but they're trying to help me keep perspective on it. And I
Right.
think that's smart, because I don't want to get carried away with worry and stress and be in a frame of mind that's not useful, that actually deters me from being successful in my life.
Right.
So I want to be happy. That's the whole
Right.
point. I want to be happy and relaxed. I don't want to constantly panic about everything to do with living. So that was a great thing to hear. And that's why I'm very happy to share that with everybody, because I'm a thinker. I'm constantly thinking about what I'm doing next. And my brain goes 100 miles an hour, and I'm constantly aware of my surroundings and doing things. So being told on a spiritual level that things are going to be okay is a big
Right.
So I'm sharing my sigh with everyone, because
Right.
if I can sigh, trust me, you can sigh too. It's going to be okay. So I just wanted to share that. So on to other things. So some new things that happened this year that have never happened before. I had my first fairy encounter, and that was amazing. And for anyone that didn't hear the episode that I talked about this in detail, I'll go very quickly about it. A fairy contacted me to tell me to shut my window because there were some fires I didn't know about that were not that far from where we lived. And it was the middle of the night. And they woke me up and told me to close the window, and showed up right outside our window, which is amazing.
It was interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it was awesome.
They were whoever it was, whatever fairy it was actually pretty forceful, pretty adamant,
Yes.
It's great.
Yes, but that was wonderful. And I learned something important too. Fairies don't like to be called fairies. They prefer to be called good neighbors.
Yep, good neighbors.
So I'm trying really hard to remember that. Just like some spirits have told me that they don't mind being called spirits. They don't really like being called dead, and that they like being called living adjacent. So I've been trying to spread that, because if they prefer that, I want to be respectful about that.
Hashtag living adjacent.
Yes. Let's
make that go viral.
Yes. Okay. And
hashtag
then
living adjacent.
Visitors that we've had in our seances have been very diverse, extremely diverse. We've had Anubis here,
mm-hmm.
the Egyptian god Anubis of the dead. We've had Hecate here for a visit. We've had Isis here for a visit. We've had angels here for a visit many, many, many times. And Doug was helping to remind me that we've had archangels also. So when I say angels, I'm talking about angels that work with souls all the time, that help with the living and the people that are without a body. And so they really are workers. They're worker bees. They're constantly doing things for us in or out of our bodies. And so they're here to help us stay on our path. They're here to help us stay connected, and stay focused on our life goals and plans, and to help us in times of great stress. They're here to really support us. You don't have to be religious to have a spiritual experience. You really don't. You are not missing out by not going to a specific church or having a specific faith. I want to advocate 100% that if you live a life in an agnostic way or in an atheist way, I understand. I really do understand. But there are times in your life when you may have things happen that you cannot explain. And for that, I'd say, welcome to the world of angels, because they're kind of amazing. And have I seen them? Yes. I've been around them most all my life. I didn't know that they were angels when I was a kid, but now I can tell the difference in their energies. And it's kind of amazing, and it's kind of cool. I love it. But I just wanted to say that because all of these visitors remind me that I'm such a fragment of a bigger, bigger, bigger world. And I've said this before and I'll keep saying it. The spiritual world and the afterlife is so much bigger than the life we live in. It's so vast. It has so many layers and so many levels, and it's incredible. It's an incredible experience all the way around. And so I am very blessed and very grateful to be able to share that with anybody. And so for all the wonderful people that have come on the show this year and last year and helped with discussing things in the paranormal, I am so grateful to everyone that has been here as a guest and shared their stories about everything under the sun, from demons to UFOs to Dogman and Sasquatch. And that's another thing I learned this year. Sasquatch does not like to be called Bigfoot. They don't like it. Try to get it out of your vocabulary if you're trying to communicate with them, because they really don't like it. I am learning how to communicate with Sasquatch as plural.
Well, and
amazing.
Also to expand on that, they don't really care for Sasquatch either, or any of the other names. They apparently have a name.
Yes.
We're not aware of what that is yet, but they will suffice with Sasquatch for now.
Right. There's several that work with people that I know, and they have learned their first names. I haven't learned my contact's first name yet. I'm just waiting patiently because it's not on my perimeter to set that. I just have to wait till I guess I'm ready to hear it, or maybe they're ready to share that with me. So that's kind of amazing.
Right. But you have gotten to the point where your energy has developed to where you can recognize a Sasquatch energy when it's in the area.
Right.
We've been driving along, and you've openly said there's a Sasquatch here somewhere.
Yeah, I can feel him, which I love. I think that's phenomenal. One of the other things that we learned, we saw a few things that were a little different this year. Like in my entire life, I've only seen 2 ghost horses, but I've seen several this year. Several. I've actually had a couple of spirits show up with wagons drawn by horses, which blows my mind. It's incredible.
Right, yeah. Well, we had the one pioneer guy who pulled up in his horse-drawn wagon, set the brake, and came and sat down and talked. That was cool.
Was really cool, because, and I know this may sound silly and funny, but okay, so we're in a home that's off the ground, of course, okay, and so when his wagon pulled up, his spirit wagon, I guess I should call it, when he set the brake and stepped, he literally just stepped right onto our sunroom, like it was the same height as the wagon or something. It was funny. And so that was kind of cool. I just, little things like that tickle me. I think that's hysterically cool. We had, I'm just going to share really quick. I have notes from last week's seance, and this was incredible. Now, this does not always happen, but I just wanted to share this one particular story. So a guy named Dan came here from Idaho on a wagon train, and he said his full name was Daniel Arthur MacArthur, which I thought was interesting. And he spelled his name differently. He said it was Danial instead of IEL. And he said that when he came in the 1870s to Washington, he said they started out in the Idaho area with 15 wagons, and before they even left, they lost 2 wagons. 2 people who ended up not, 2 families didn't end up being able to come. 13 wagons left Idaho. Only 4 made the journey to Washington. 2 of them stayed in California. They lost 1 dear family over the passes in Nevada. An Indian tribe at the edge of California scared them out of staying in Oregon, which made them push on to Washington. 2 families stayed in Modesto. And so what was really fascinating is he explained that when he came to Washington, that there was a coastal tribe that happened to be in the area that Doug and I live in, the Kamaswashugal area. And this Indian tribe said that their barometer to figure out whether the Great Spirit was working through people or not is if they made it all the way here. And they made a point of saying that people that traveled that long distance from the other side of the states and stayed in Portland, they didn't trust, because Portland was so wild and full of so much crazy energy and so much negative energy and so much greed, that there were several tribe members that really felt that if people had journeyed that long and they succumbed to greed and stayed in Portland just for money, that they would never be trusted. And so a family or a traveler that made it all the way across the last stretch of water to make it to Washington,
Columbia River, which
they
is
felt were being led by the Great Spirit, their Great Spirit, to come here.
Right.
And so they were treated differently, which I thought, I've never heard that in a history story, but okay. That was incredible.
But I would say, crossing, when you're a little wagon train,
yeah,
of what, 4 wagons, 4 families.
Yeah.
At that time, the 1870s, crossing the Columbia River, because it's a pretty wide river, would have been quite the ordeal.
Yes. Well, and they said,
it's not like there were bridges then. So, yeah, it would have been quite the ordeal.
And they said that the weather was colder then than it is now in Washington. They had more snow than we do now. One of the families nearly died their first winter in Washington, and he showed me images of fingers and toes that had frostbite that had to be amputated. And he used some expressions I didn't hear before that were interesting. He said you could make a good penny selling travel diaries. So one of the things he explained to me is that as they journeyed, several people tried to keep diaries of their trip because they were actually worth money if you could get them published. He also said he would come back again. And he said one of the saddest parts of the journey is that of the 4 families that made it to Washington, after the first year, all of the children had died except for one girl that made it. So they traveled all that way and made it through many perils and many hardships. And they actually got sick here from different things that had happened between the weather and just being in different areas, I guess. Yeah, incredible. So it was an incredible story. So I don't hear stories like that in so much detail every time I have a seance, but once in a while, a spirit will stay and just share a lot like that. And it blows my mind, because that's incredible. I mean, that's a crazy, amazing story that he went through. And some of the imagery and things that he showed me were, he didn't show me their whole trip by any means. That would have taken hours or days even. But just his feeling and his way of explaining the things that they went through, and some of the things that he shared about, the enduring emotions that happen when you come through with a family. They become your extended family. These people went through incredible hardships and shared what little they had with each other just to make it, just to get here. And he said, when people split off and went to Modesto, they were very sad, but they were happy because they got to where they wanted to go. And, there was just a lot of these emotions that he brought with him to share and talk about the experiences they had. And then how, things seemed pretty calm in California compared to some of the areas that they had been through until they got to the edge, right at the edge of California and Ashland, Oregon. And so that was surprising to me. And so, they literally got scared all the way to Washington, basically at the very end of the trip, because they hadn't really decided. There were all these options of places to go, and they did want to see Portland, and they did. And he said his word for Portland was dirty. He said Portland was very dirty, and that he didn't understand why anyone would want to stay there. He said, yeah, the money was very tempting. And he said, but it wasn't a trade I could handle. And he said he felt his whole body just when he made it over to Washington, because it was calmer. And he said when they first got into to Oregon, that it was calmer and nicer. They liked Oregon City, and they had heard about Astoria. And so they were afraid to go to Astoria because they had heard horrible stories about what a roughneck city that was. And we've heard that, that during that time frame, that was the case. Makes a lot of sense. There was a lot going on. The turn of the century was a very desperate time, and there were a lot of hardships for people to endure, health crisis, and just keeping supplies, just keeping yourself with food and clean water was a chore. It was incredible just to make it and to try and survive out here. It took incredible courage and determination. One of the things I thought was interesting, though, too, is that in this year, periodically I get, like I said in the past, I get updates that are kind of random sometimes that don't necessarily go with the seance. They're just spiritual news or spiritual information that I get. And I just say that because it's information that doesn't necessarily pertain to one thing. It's just general things. So I've been told about a volcano that explodes from the side, not the top, which I thought was very bizarre. I didn't know that was possible. And I've also been told that the weather that's coming for Washington and Oregon and Idaho and even California is going to be a lot more intense in this coming year than what it's been in 50 years. It's going to be very, very cold, and that we're going to get more intense snow-like weather, but it's going to be later than what we're used to, and that it's going to be a ride, that it's going to be intense. And I've heard that from other sources too, so it's not the first time I've heard that, but I thought it was interesting that they thought, the spirit guides thought it was important to share that. So for whatever it's worth, if you have a wood fireplace, get some extra wood just because. If you live at home and you don't have a wood fireplace, look up some things on the internet for how to heat water and do things alternatively. I won't make suggestions here because this is for entertainment purposes only, but there are things that you can do at home to heat water without electricity. Then I would highly recommend you look into that stuff, just because maybe it won't happen and it'll be just something you put in the back of your mind for what if down the road. But never hurts to be prepared. I was a Girl Scout, and I firmly believe in being prepared for whatever comes our way. Some of the other things that happened. Okay, I talked about the ghost horses. I made a list, you guys, because I forget stuff, so I didn't want to forget.
Yeah.
One of the things that was really incredible that I wanted to talk about, because I've talked about keeping away negativity from us and being cautious, but I wanted to share something with people. If you felt like you have bad luck all the time, if you feel like you have been cursed, or you feel sometimes like, wow, if it wasn't for bad luck, I wouldn't have any at all, kind of thing, I just want to introduce a thought to you to consider. I do not personally believe that people are born cursed, but I do believe, on the contrary side of that people can have attachments that come down from a lineage. And what I mean by that is, there can be things that happen with your ancestors, that things that they did or that they took part in, that can leave a bad energy that goes all the way down until somebody breaks that tie. And you can do that. You can do that yourself. If you're interested in learning more about that, go ahead and contact me, and I will direct you to where you can get help with that. There was a spirit that showed up that had an attachment, and this poor little soul was trapped in a building in Vancouver, Washington, and there was a lot of poltergeist activity, and they basically kept her there and didn't let her leave, and they just fed off of her energy. And if you know much about ghosts, or you've studied ghosts, you know that they don't have a lot of energy to begin with. So she was kept like a prisoner at this poltergeist place. And so I have a feeling I know exactly where this place is, and I know people that have been there, and I've heard that there's a lot of poltergeist activity, but it really disheartened me that this poor thing was stuck there. And I really wish she would have been found and gotten out sooner, but she got out finally, and I got rid of her attachment, and she started to feel quite a bit better before she left. So I was really grateful and thankful that I could help her because it was sad. I mean, she was such a fragment of what I normally see in souls. And when you've been around somebody that's been depressed a long time, they just seem wilted like a flower. There's just not a fragment of themselves. They don't have that light, that spark in their eyes, and they just seem dim. And that's what she was like. This poor little soul was so weak and so tired and so frightened. And she didn't realize she had an attachment. Even in the afterlife, she did not realize that was affecting her.
Well, what's interesting to me on that whole scenario was that now you always see people's attachments, whether they're walking down the street, you see, oh yeah, the so-and-so's got this, in fact, a little personal story is when Holly and I first got together. Now, most people in our circle of friends know that I'm a transplant recipient. I have a kidney transplant, and Holly was able to see that I had an attachment from my transplant, from the donor kidney. It transferred over to me.
Yep.
And she was able to get rid of it. So what's fascinating is that, like I said, Holly sees these things all the time. I was not aware of that other spirits can have attachments.
Yeah.
That's really fascinating.
Right.
Also the fact that, and you've never relayed this to me before. I mean, as this young girl is sitting here talking with you, her attachment actually reared its ugly head behind her.
Mm-hmm.
That was really interesting. That's never happened here before.
So attachments tend to mask themselves often, and they will actually hide behind their victims when they get around psychics, because we tend to see those things.
Right. So I guess that actually leads into that the announcement that you have a brand new spirit guide.
Yes.
His name is Julian.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And he seems to be on a whole new level.
So Julian actually helped me with this attachment, and I have to rephrase what I just said. So I didn't necessarily help her directly with the attachment. Julian actually did most of the work.
Mm-hmm.
I prayed for her and did some things on that level, but he actually diminished this entity, which I haven't seen in quite a while.
Yeah, you described it as the entity actually dissolved.
Yeah, which I have not seen very many times in my life. Usually things get banished because energy does not die. It transfers to something else. But to have something powerful enough to diminish an energy and force it to become something else than what it is, that's intense. And so Julian did that right in front of me. And I went, that just blew me away, because that's a very unusual thing to behold, to see. But the transformation in her, it was almost like, when you talk to someone and they're outside your house and you're looking through your screen, that image that, they're a little cloudy looking because you're looking through a screen. That's what she was like. And as soon as he got rid of that energy, it was like this lifting happened, and her coloration became brighter and she became brighter. And it was like, she was like, oh, she took like this, if she had lungs, that's what she was doing. She was breathing. And it was like, it was incredible. It was absolutely mind-blowing. If you hear explosions in the background, it is New Year's Eve here where we're at. It's December 31st.
We're in Ukraine, and
yes. So we're not in a scary place. We're just hearing actual noise from celebrations. Fireworks are legal here where we live. So
for today.
For a couple times a year, 4th of July and New Year's, they're allowed. So we have the little stands at the end of the street, and our little quick marts have Lots of little stand pop-ups for selling firecrackers this time of year. Pretty incredible. So Julian is a spirit guide that is now working with me, and he is he's some type of angel that he's got some skills. I don't understand him fully. I'm getting to know him very slowly, and he's a lot more chatty than some of my other spirit guides that I've worked with, and so that's kind of fun because Ian, who's been with me my entire life, is a very minimalist chatter. He is minimalist is even a grand word. He doesn't say hardly anything. He's very minimal in what he says. He keeps everything very direct and to the point, which I kind of love and I'm used to now. But to have someone actually converse with me is like, oh, okay, thank you. It's like having a whole conversation.
Right.
It's like, oh my, all right. I'm just going to shut up and you just say whatever you want. I'm going to listen. It's kind of cool. I love it. But that's kind of amazing. So the other thing I wanted to share with all of these spirits that have come to visit, because we have tons of them all year long, you guys, tons. And so when they come to visit, they share things about what they're going through or what's happening around them. And there's a spiritual expanse that's happening. And I know for some people, they connect it to astrology. We're getting out of the era of Pisces and we're going into other things and all this stuff's happening. And I don't understand all of that stuff. I know it's very interesting and I'm learning a little bit about that because I'm curious about it. And I can just say what I know from what I feel and what I see in the spirit realm. And there's some really neat things that are blossoming right now that are all positive. They're very enlightened and they're very loving. And I am excited. I am excited for what's going to become more normal for people. I'm excited for not a big religious movement to happen, but a spiritual blossoming to happen. And that's just to say that people will find their hope again. People are going to discover resolutions where there was things in question. People are going to find it easier to choose their life trails. It's going to be a little smoother to do things because there's a resolute in the air that's going to affect people very positively. There's going to be people that are going to get very angry and upset, and then they're going to just come to a point in their minds where I have to move forward. What happened to you in the past, what happened to you yesterday, what happened to you 5 minutes ago, what happened to you 50 years ago, if it's not in front of your face, you're going to cut it off. You're going to look at your past through different eyes. You're going to say, I'm not experiencing that thing, whatever it is, anymore. It's not part of my momentary experience right now. So I don't need it anymore. Therefore, I let it go. Which sounds impossible to some of you, I know. But it's coming. And it will feel better. It will feel better. You will be able to go, yep, I was a victim. Yep, I was hurt. Yes, I was this or that. And it really damaged me, or it really made me feel crappy. And I didn't deserve it. And it was really unfair and awful. But that was yesterday. And today, this is where I am right now. And this is where I'm going. And that's not going to happen again. And I'm in charge of my destiny. And I'm going to be okay. And that sucked, but that's not where I am today. Which, yay. I mean, moving forward is awesome. And if you can get some freedom in your mind and relax enough to move forward and do something that's good for you and feel happiness where you haven't before, that sounds great to me. If we can move forward and be happy, yay, sign me up. I think that's delightful. I love the sound of that. So if you've been in a rut, if you've been feeling stuck for a while, hang on. It's getting better. It's going to get better. Things are going to be a little smoother. We are going to have bumps in the road because that's life. We can't have no bumps. It would be boring. It would be so boring and we wouldn't appreciate it. When we go through crap, we appreciate things much differently than when we don't. And I know that's not what you want to hear, but it's the truth. And going forward, you are going to feel more solid and you're going to feel better about your choices. And that's the best I could hope for anybody, is to feel good about what you're doing and be happy. So that makes me amazingly happy to be able to share that. So I think most, if anything, the spiritual expanse I'm really excited about. And the peaceful feeling about the coming year, I have to say, it's a freaking relief. We have had such a basket of traumas the last 5 years in particular. And politics wise, I'm exhausted beyond words. I will not talk about politics on this page. That's the only thing I'm going to say about that. I'm just exhausted by it all. I just want to have a life, and I want my friends and family and neighbors to all have a life that's worth living. And that's what I would wish for all of us, that we get to move forward with our lives and enjoy our families and experience new and wonderful things. I'm looking forward to the great stories I'm going to get to share, and all the new interviews in this coming year will be amazing. I'm more than happy to listen to anybody. If you think you've got something you might want to share, or you know someone that's got a story, send them to me. And I'm going to put this up just for anyone else. Let me find it right here. For anyone that's listening, you can reach me at hollyspandorium@gmail.com, and that's HOLLYSPANDORIUM @gmail.com. I'm happy to talk to anybody. You can also find me on Facebook. I have a Holly Jordan Psychic page and a personal page that you could find me at. I did have a podcast page, but for some reason, in October of this year, my Instagram account got hacked, and somehow whoever got into it broke community standards, and that was linked to my podcast page. And so by default, I was in trouble with Facebook and Instagram all at the same time. And so they shut it all down, and I have not had access to it since. So I normally
we may need to start a new page.
I may need to. It's just bizarre. But yeah, I know several people that's happened to, so I feel so bad. It's not just me. So about some of our visitors, Doug. Oh, the one thing I didn't share about is the 4 elementals that came to visit. Do you want to share what your impression was of some of that?
Well, some of them seem, elementals, at least in my conception of what you've told me, and my understanding is they're not necessarily negative or positive as far as energies go. They can go either direction, but they can be very chaotic. They are very powerful.
Yeah.
And they don't take fools lightly. I'll say that. And I mean, we've had several here.
Yeah.
The last one was probably the most interesting because they relayed a term to you that neither one of us had ever heard, that he was an Aeolian elemental. And again, we'd never heard that terminology. And fortunately, Holly wrote it down real quick. And then later that night, she actually researched it. Sure enough, the terminology came up. It was real.
Alien. Yeah. Very
alien,
yeah. Not alien. Alien.
Yeah.
But I spelled it phonetically, and I'm amazed that I found anything on it. But elementals, if you think of a movie or TV show where a judge is shown and they're saying ignorance of the law is no excuse for it, that attitude, that's an elemental. They don't give a crap that you were raised a human and you don't know their world. They don't care.
Mm-hmm.
They don't. If you don't understand how they operate and you don't understand what they're there for, that's your problem.
Yeah,
literally.
It seems that there is a respect level.
Yeah.
Just like with our good neighbors.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
Well, it's interesting because when you meet strangers and you get an impression, you get a sense of them, their body language or whatever, from what they're wearing, their tone of voice, their cologne, whatever it is that triggers in your mind a reaction of some kind. Elementals have an intensity that I can't hardly describe, and they're all different. They feel different, but it's similar in the sense that it is a power like I can't hardly put to words. It almost feels like the air is denser when they're in the room, and it's kind of like being near a Sasquatch. It's kind of a little bit like that, and that there's like a volume to their intensity. If you get near someone that has too much cologne on, it overwhelms your senses. It's like, whoa, it's just too much. You know how you've been in an elevator. Everyone's done this at least once, I imagine. You go in an elevator or a small space, or you walk in a room where someone with too much cologne is just left and their odor is still there and it knocks you over. It's just, you can barely breathe. It makes your O factors just go. That's what they're like, but with a psychic presence. It is the sense that someone's standing behind you and in front of you all at once. It's this incredible pressure in the air, and it's this power. It's a power, and it's not like a power you've ever felt before. You're in awe, you're a little intimidated. Some are a little scarier than others, I will say that. This is a presence that you want to run away from. This is not a presence that you draw to. This is not a presence that makes you feel warm and fuzzy and cozy and lovey-dovey. And no, this is one that makes you feel like you better pay attention and don't take your eyes off of it. And when they're working with you, it's a relief. And you have this sense that you better not move, and you better not blink, and you better not do anything unless you are asked to. There's just this power of them, and this incredible effect that they have when they enter a room. They're very incredible. And I've dealt with them for years, and I've had people come and tell me, and this is what's interesting. I've had several people come and tell me there was an elemental in my house. How do they know that? Where would that come from? How would you sense that? You just know. You feel it. It's so overwhelming. There's nothing like it. There isn't anything like it in the world. They're completely different. They do amazing things. They're capable of incredible wonders. They're capable of healing. They're capable of transforming things. They're capable of making things different in the world in large amounts. And they are extremely protective of whatever element that they're connected to, whether it's earth, land, fire, water, whatever it is that they're elementally connected to. Land elementals are the ones I've run into the most. Where are they? They're everywhere. They're everywhere. They're in every state that I've been in. They move however they want. They are not so limited by distance or space. They don't have time constraints. They don't have area constraints that I've ever been aware of. I do know that some of them are assigned to areas, but that doesn't mean they have to stay there all the time. They do move around. In my experience, that's what I've experienced anyway. They really are kind of intense. I don't know. I guess I've explained that pretty well. It's just hard. I would wish that I could share it in such a way to make it real to everyone else, to what I feel. But you'd know when you're around one. You can tell. They change the air in the room. Like Doug has experienced, when we have a lot of ghosts in the house, it gets colder. It just does. It's like a shift. You can just feel it it's like, even when the ghosts are not visiting, when the temperature drops 4 or 5 degrees outside, we feel it in the house. our house is 60 some odd years old, and it's just old. You can just tell. And so when I know there's no temperature changing and there's just a wad of ghosts in here, the air starts to drop. It gets cooler in here, and you
Yep.
feel it. You can feel it. Doug's felt it even, which is amazing. Doug is getting to experience more this year than he has before. Doug's actually heard his spirit guide a couple of times, which is wonderful. And I wanted to just share one thing. So when you've started meditating, can you share a little bit about that and what you do and how that's working for you?
First off, I feel like I absolutely suck at it. Yeah, I am not the person, who can quiet their mind very easily. It's it's constantly going. I'm a musician. I'm constantly thinking about music and writing, and so it's really, really difficult for me to sit and meditate and be quiet and clear my mind.
Mm-hmm.
But I have found when I'm successful at it, it really helps.
Yeah.
If you can clear your mind, it kind of sets the tone for the whole day.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty obvious. I think you've noticed that difference in me.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So just for anyone listening or watching, if you've never meditated, what the hell is meditation anyway? What is it? It's just controlling your mind for a minute. There's no such thing as complete silence in your mind unless you're a monk and you're in Tibet somewhere for 7 or 8 years. They're the ones that can totally quiet their minds. We can't. I can't. I don't have that ability. But I've learned that if I just focus on something, and for some people it's silence. Me, I need some kind of background noise. I need white noise or brown noise or green noise or whatever noise. I need a fan. I need something to help distract myself a little bit. And then I need to just focus on something small, a circle, a box, something simple. And it just blocks out all my other thoughts momentarily for just a moment. And that moment of quiet focus is all it is. And that's where it allows peace to come in and just calm your mind down. If you can try and meditate for 3 minutes a day, 90 seconds, that's it. If you could just try it, I challenge you to do that this year. That's my wish, my hope, and my prayer for everybody listening and watching, to find some prayer time or meditation time, just 3 minutes a day, you guys, just for yourselves, to help yourself have a better day and a better you. And I want to just say thank you for all of your interest. Thank you for following and liking. Thank you for watching the episodes. I love the comments, and I really love getting to share the stuff that I get to do with everybody, because it's amazing. We live in a wonderful world full of lots of miracles and amazing things all the time. And I just want to talk about it as much as people are willing to. And thank you to everyone that has shared stories. Again, I appreciate you all so much. And from Doug and I both, we just want to wish everyone a happy and safe New Year. And thank you all for coming to join us here at Holly's Pandorium. Thank you so much. Have a good night, you guys.
Happy New Year.